Okay. So since we're just about at noon, I call officially this meeting of the Rotary Club of New York to order. We are the Rotary Club, Club number 6, Host Club of America. Today is September 15th, 2022. And very delighted to have Lance Brazelton here today, joining us from Huntsville. The connection with Lance came about through my good friend, Debbie Dreyer, who is the executive director of the Rotary Club of Huntsville. And I know her for quite some years, and Lance is also a friend of her. So before we go to the official introduction, I will ask our pianist, Audrey Levine, to play the national anthem. Right ahead. Thank you again, Audrey. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So without further ado, I once again welcome everybody who is able to join today. Particular, I would, as always, like to welcome our Rotary International past president, Wilfred Wilkinson. Tremendous honor to have you once again here today. And some of our New York Rotarians, of course, Malika, Bruce, who is probably one of our members who has the best attendance in any of the meetings for that matter. So a warm welcome goes out to Malika, of course. And I would like now to give you a brief overview on Lance Brazelton, who is a 24-year-old award-winning author, publisher, illustrator, film producer, and international speaker. In 2015, Lance was recruited as a writer, reporter, and audio operator behind the scenes for the Tournament of Roses Parade and Rose Ball game in Pasadena, California. In spring 2015, Lance mentored a group of high school students from both Huntsville City Schools and Madison County Schools. The classes were taught at Lowe Mill ARTS Entertainment in Huntsville, Alabama. He taught his students how to write scripts and conduct interviews for digital storytelling. In April 2016, Lance wrote, illustrated, and self-published his first book titled What Daddy Didn't Know, Letters of a Fatherless Child. It serves as a memoir of his childhood, detailing how he overcame childhood trauma and became a successful individual while on the verge of becoming a statistic. In May 2017, What Daddy Didn't Know won the gold medal in the 11th Annual National Indie Excellence Awards in the category for autobiography. In July 2017, Lance's speaking career gained international recognition when he presented his speech, Sacrifices of a Single Parent, at the 58th Parents Without Partners International Convention in Lexington, Kentucky. At the beginning of 2018, Lance's writing and original artwork was featured in Alabama's Best Emerging Poets, an anthology by C Publishing House that recognizes the best upcoming writers across the United States. Lance has established a professional career and continues to strive for excellence in all his endeavors. Let us give a very warm Rotary welcome to Lance now. Lance, you have the floor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to I want to first off start off. I get very emotional when I hear my bio being read. You know, you get in the momentum of trying to do things and accomplish things, and you don't really stop and think about how far you've really come until somebody points it out to you. And is it okay if I do like a share screen and play some videos while?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay,
Let me make sure that it works.
gotcha.
It should be just fine.
All right, gotcha. All right. Just want to play a few things as I go along to kind of kick it off right here.
This is when you inspired me, Lance. Is when you took out time to write letters to your father who was absent in your life.
I am inspired by your commitment to your craft and your drive to perfection.
And I'm inspired by Lance Brazelton via the way he illustrates his faith, the manner in which he conducts himself, and also based on the fact that he is focused on business and branding at such a young age.
Lance, you have inspired me by doing great things, which inspired me to do good things in my life.
You wrote a book, and that just motivates me to be like, my other people are successful, so that means I gotta get successful. So now it's turn up time.
What Danny did not know, we know that this day has been ordained. Dr. Hall, you don't know Mr. Brazelton. We didn't even know why God orchestrated the program like he did, but when we flow under the anointing, come on now, she done gave the word and said, don't matter what people done to you, it doesn't matter if you had a father, it doesn't matter what situation you came up in, it doesn't matter what daddy didn't know.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to play that to kind of kick off the introduction to what I'm about to say to you guys. But I think it'll be very important that I highlight the relevance of how Rotary has played a very pivotal role in my story. And that story actually starts when I was a junior in high school. I went to I was at Lee High School in Huntsville, Alabama at the time. And I remember I had got called to the principal's office, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I haven't really done anything. I don't really bother anybody. I don't understand why I'm being called to the office. I get to the office and they told me that I was selected to be in a program called Strive. Strive is something that the Huntsville Rotary Club has. It's one of their initiatives that they have where they go into inner city schools, and students who are selected are assigned a mentor in that specific program. And I had never really had a mentor speak to my vulnerabilities before. And my mentor, his name is Doug Martinson. He has a law firm in Huntsville, Martinson and Beeson. And I remember when I was first introduced to my mentor, it was one of those things to where, because you never had anybody speak to you like that before, it was just strange at the beginning. The authentic thoughts that were going on in my head was, okay, first of all, who is this guy and why is he talking to me like he cares so much about me? But little did I know that those small deposits once a week were going to turn into a lifelong relationship beyond anything I could have ever thought of at that point in time in high school. And a lot of people who are hesitant about mentoring at-risk youth, they're looking at it from the perspective of sometimes you feel like you have to be at a specific stage in your life or do a specific thing to relate to a specific kid. But in all actuality, some of the most impactful things that I learned from my mentor, believe it or not, didn't even come from things that he told me. The most of it just came from the exposure of being around someone of his stature. the environments that he was in. He would bring me to his office, being able to have conversations with people he works with, and you start to think to yourself, you haven't really built too many business relationships, beyond your single mother's front porch. But, in the process of having conversation with people in these environments, it's kind of like it showed me that I really did have the potential to do something better than what I naturally thought I could do. So the way that our relationship had went, my mentor would come to the school once a week, and it was always during lunch period. He would come to the school for 1 hour once a week, and over the course of time, it just turned into something that was just so addictive, and started to learn so much more from him. Fast forward, after graduation, he was my mentor for junior year and senior year at Lee High School. Fast forward after that, I wrote and published my first book in April of 2016, What Daddy Didn't Know, The Letters of a Fatherless Child. And okay, I published it in 2016 when I was, let's see, how old was I? That's funny, I can't even remember how old I am. But I graduated in 2013, published a book in 2016. So my relationship with Rotary kind of transformed into, I started to become this proud poster child, basically. I was doing a lot of things that people my age usually didn't have the education to do. And, when it comes to other kids who are in that program, it can be very impactful for them to see someone who's doing things like that, and they're only a few years older than they are. So my relationship with Rotary transformed into this relationship to where I started speaking back into the lives of the youth that would come up through their programs and things of that nature. And just to show an example of how my mentor pulled out some of my hidden potentials, one of the most memorable times that I can think of, this was junior year in the 11th grade. I was on the verge of failing. And I remember my mentor he didn't tell me he was doing this. He had scheduled a meeting before school with every single one of my teachers, the principal and the assistant principal. He got everybody into one room and kind of surprised me one morning just to ask me one question. And that question was, why are you really failing? And I had never really been put on the spot like that. And I was the type of kid, I was a quiet kid growing up, but I've always been very, very intellectual, just never really tried my best per se. And when he had did that, my honest answer to him, I told him that I simply wasn't applying myself. I didn't really take school seriously growing up. A lot of things that I was being taught, I kind of felt like I should have probably been in AP classes or something like that. But that was the moment when he really started to challenge me to really pull out my hidden potential. And from that moment on, I no longer became a failing student and things of that nature. And that hidden potential turned into something that trickled into my writing. Now, as far as my writing is concerned, the way What Daddy Didn't Know came about, I had always written poetry throughout my childhood and things like that. Always recited poetry at events and things of that nature. And something I had never done before is to go back and write my inspiration for why I wrote a specific piece or specific poem. So I selected about 33 of what I felt was the best poems I had wrote at the time. I went back, I wrote my inspiration for it. I wrote what was going on at the time, what was going on at home, what was going on at school, what was happening in regards to relationships with females, what was happening emotionally, what time of the date during the year it was. And after doing that, for what I felt was some of the most pivotal pieces during my adolescent years, going back and looking at it, it felt like I was reading a book. And I saw that it was, I had kind of started to tap into this untold story. And what Daddy didn't know was actually the name of one of the pieces that I had written. And it has stuck out to me because I started thinking to myself, I wonder how many kids are growing up in a similar situation or similar circumstance. Started to do some research, and found out at the time there was, according to the United States Census Bureau, there was an estimate of 24 million children in America living in biological father homes at that point in time. And that's when I saw an opportunity to where, okay, maybe this can be an opportunity to where I can take my childhood trauma and turn it into something beautiful for people who don't necessarily, I don't want to say don't have a way out of their circumstance, but don't have a narrative that can shine some positive light on their negative circumstance. And that was the moment when I had decided to just name the entirety of the project What Daddy Didn't Know. And when it came to the publishing phase, I was still young at the time, didn't have money to talk to a publisher. So I actually spent 2 years specifically studying and learning self-publication. And after I got it down pat, I self-published it, did everything by myself on my own. And from that point on, it started to do some things that I never thought it would do. And something that's interesting about when you share your story and when you self-publish it, the way self-publishing companies work is kind of like, well, when it's a physical book per se, they work from the perspective of being print on demand, for example. So it's kind of like until there's a demand for a sale, the printing company won't even print the book unless they have somebody they know they're going to send it to. But what's interesting about it is, all you see is a royalty, for those sales the following month, but you don't even know who's purchasing the book, who's gravitating to it. It's like you have no idea unless those people decide to reach out to you. And there has been times to where there has been kids from different schools across the country reaching out to me, sending me emails in regards to how they came across the story, what they're doing with the book at their school. And it was just, and it just turned into something that was so beautiful to where, from your perspective, it might seem like, okay, I spent all this time doing this. I'm only selling a few copies every month. Nobody's really looking at it or reading it right now. But you never really stopped to think, that one book that was purchased, is being used in the classroom where a teacher has, 4 to 5 different classes per day and things of that nature. So from that point, when I saw that my narrative had relevance in the educational system, I started to think to myself, okay, knowing that it has relevance there, how can I start to do things to where I can actually create more resources to where it's bigger than just a story. Because growing up, it's kind of like you can read a lot of inspirational stuff and see a lot of inspirational moves and things of that nature. But a lot of times it usually stops at it was just a book, or it was just a movie, or it was just a story. And from that point, I actually started to produce programs and presentations to go along with it. Like, for example, we had this one that was extremely relevant in regards to the story. I wanna play another video before I tap into this one. Play another video right quick. Let's see here. This video that I'm about to show you is an example of how one of those presentations came about. This is a video that we would showcase before the presentation, and I'll dive into the details of it. It's only a few minutes right here.
It is okay to be so stressed and overwhelmed that you feel like you need to talk to someone about it. And by that, I mean going to therapy.
I first knew I wanted to be a pilot at a very young age.
Verge of failing my class. All right, come on in. Do you know why I called you in today?
No, sir.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're on the verge of failing my class.
Professor, please. My circumstances at home started interfering with my academics. I try my best to balance the two, but yeah. Is there anything I can do for extra credit?
I need you to understand something, and I'm going to tell you the unvarnished, transparent truth.
Yes, sir.
The world doesn't care about you, your problems, or your childhood trauma. And I know this may sound harsh, but what your generation is starving for is just someone to tell you the truth. And you know I'm not an advocate for extra credit, but in your case, because of your intelligence and your diligence, I'm going to make an exception.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Murray.
Okay, now your project's going to be a social experiment.
It'll be a piece of cake. You're the best, Mr. Murray.
At the Alabama State Penitentiary.
Wait, Mr. Murray, you know I can't step foot in that place again.
Until you're able to realize and face your upbringing, you're not going to grow. You're not going to be able to be successful, even if we give you a degree from this university. All right. The U.S. Census Bureau shows that there's 24 million children in America who are in fatherless homes, and most of them are destined to become a statistic or an ill on society. And your assignment is going to be to interview one of these statistics and see their thought process and analyze their lives and see how they got there. Hey, you got this.
You're right.
All There we go. Okay, so for example, that would be something that we would do before the presentation. The presentation in the program was something that was it was kind of like it was a family operated thing. My family was very heavily involved with it. That was actually my little sister who was in it, and the guy who was playing the role of the professor, that's actually who my mentor was in high school. That was Doug Martinson. He told me he wasn't good at acting, but you know, he was able to get it done. And what we would do when the school would play it, after the video, my sister would actually come before the students to where they thought maybe we're just watching the video, but then that when they saw that she was really here, she would come out, give a few educational points on statistics and becoming an ill in society. And I'm the quote unquote random selected inmate per se. We were able to get a real jumpsuit from the Alabama State Penitentiary. And the way we got it was so funny. Before we got the real jumpsuit, I had went to a Halloween store around Halloween and got like one of the one of the orange ones that say Psycho on it or whatever. And, you know, just thinking that's all we got at the moment. And we had actually did things for some prisoners before they were released back into society. And when we had did a program for some parolees, the director had came to us and was like, okay, you know you can't wear the costume in here, right? Because it'll kind of be like mockery. And that was when they were able to get me the real thing. And then we started using the real thing at schools. We would have police escort me in. I'd be in the jumpsuit, do-rag, flip-flops, handcuffs, literally the whole nine. It looks like I'm really in jail. And I would come in before the kids, and my sister would try to attempt to ask me questions, and we would kind of role play from the perspective of why would my story be relevant if I'm someone who doesn't even have access to society. And then it kind of turns into this thing to where, capitalizing on statistics, she starts to list different statistics, and it kind of turns into this interview process from the outside looking in between a student and an inmate. In the process of that interview going, we will recite poetry at specific parts, and I would showcase specific aspects of my story without even telling them who I really was or how much I had really done, and just turned it into something to where it was kind of like you just grow along with the presentation. And we had did it. We had first premiered it. We have an event called Principally Speaking Network that the Schools Foundation does every year here in Northern Alabama. In 2019 is when we had premiered the presentation, and we basically just went around doing it for free, just trying to test and maximize. Okay, let's just test the impact of how relevant this really is. We gathered questionnaires and Q&As from everywhere we went. And after we tested the relevance of it, it's kind of like by that time, the pandemic had started to come across us. And, you know, that's when everything basically came to a halt. And, you know, then we started figuring out some ways to, okay, we got something powerful and it's something special, but, you know, we'll never be able to touch everybody doing one school at a time. From that point, we started thinking to ourselves, okay, instead of just physically doing things, how can we clone ourselves through technology to where we can maximize the impact to where the relevance of the presentation, let's say, even if we don't go to a school, you know, is this something that we can develop into something digital that we can give a school in a simple handshake instead to maximize the impact of it? And that's what we've been working on recently due to the pandemic and how we've had to adjust from it. So from that point, my story gets very interesting at that point. In the midst of doing that, I was also offered a contract to write for a multi-million-dollar company. Actually, two multi-million-dollar companies. One of them was just from the perspective of just writing blogs and things of that nature. And that was when I legitimately started writing for a living. And in the midst of doing that, I also authored a very successful business owner's life story. Now, the way this came about, Rotary even plays a part in this story as well. Okay, it was somebody from the board of Rotary, the Rotary Club in Huntsville, had asked me if I could come to a meeting to basically share my story with a potential sponsor for the program. And everything that Rotary has done for me, of course, I'm gonna be a proud poster child and do something like that. So I go to, it's not something that I do as far as like physically meeting people. A lot of times I would autograph a book to somebody I don't even know, you know, just because it kind of like puts you in your own specific space in their mind when it comes to how they remember you. They resort back to how they first met you. You know, you never met me before, but I gave you an autographed copy of my book with your name in it, and you hadn't even met me before. It was just something I would do whenever I wanted to intentionally leave an impact on somebody. And I remember when I went to this meeting, when I had gave it to him, I didn't show him that I had it at first. I kind of waited to see, okay, is there something in his speech pattern of something he says that first and foremost shows that this would even be relevant to him? And he had mentioned that he had grew up in a single parent household with only his mother. And I thought in my head, I was like, yeah, I got you. And that's when I had took it out and gave it to him. It was so interesting. He didn't even open it. He just looked at the cover for a few seconds and said that people had been begging to write his life story for decades, but God had told him in that moment that I was the one who was supposed to have that assignment. Did not even open the book. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, okay, I have it done in less than a year. Like, I'm a writer, like that's what I do. But I didn't really understand the magnitude of who I was talking to until I went home and did my research. His name is Frank Williams. He owns the #1 car dealership in Alabama, has numerous other dealerships and other business endeavors. And when I went home and did my research, did my due diligence per se, that was the moment when the energy kind of shifted into, yeah, you thought it was this, but it was like, nah, this is what's going on. And so I authored his life story in started on it in 2018 and finished the project in 2020. It's titled Legacy Heist, The Missing Treasure in America. And that story is so powerful. The common denominator of it, his life story is a great example of how anyone can navigate through generational poverty, but it also plays a role on key relationships that can speak to the vulnerabilities of people who are growing up in poverty, to where a kid who's in it, you know, they might gravitate to it because they can relate to the journey that's taking place. But let's say someone who's a Rotarian, for example, you know, might look at that story and get inspiration of how they can better serve their communities. There might be someone who's very well off, who's big on donating and giving back. It's something that they could look into as a resource to see, okay, what type of organizations do I really need to be paying attention to, you know, by seeing exactly in detail what the common denominator of generational poverty really does. And something special that we're doing with that is I recently digitized that narrative, and we're actually turning it into a business to where Legacy Heights is, which I know can probably come back and get on here and speak with y'all again in regards to this, just because of how much it is. But it's basically being turned into this virtual experience, and it is so interesting. It's a virtual experience to where chapter by chapter, you can either watch it like a movie with the visuals that play on your mind as it's being read. You can watch it like a movie, listen to it like an audiobook, or read it like an ebook, and it's all in the same setting. And along with the story, there's these things called hidden gems, to where, for example, let's say there's a chapter to where he's talking about something in regards to a specific situation that happened between him and his children. After you see the context of whatever the video is, or you read whatever that chapter is, you get to hear the raw, authentic interviews that took place before the story was even written in regards to what's taking place in this chapter. And I would like to go ahead and show you guys the trailer to that. This is something that nobody has seen. And with this being the direction in which my career is going, I felt in my spirit that I had to introduce that to you guys, because it's definitely something that I would definitely have to do another session on, specifically for it, just because of how relevant it is and how much goes into that specific project. Let's see. This is the trailer for it right here.
Frank, where are you? Pumpkin, are you okay?
Why are we so poor? If this is everything life puts you offer, then I don't want to live.
Before you were born, I prayed in a puddle of tears for you. So this life thing, you might as well learn to love it.
How do you love something that doesn't make you happy?
Because you are a king. I've carried you thus far. Now it's your turn to lead the way.
But I don't have a map of where to go.
I want you to be the first in our family to graduate from generational poverty.
But Mom, I'm scared.
I need you to follow what you are afraid of. Because that's where the hidden treasure in America is buried alive.
Sometimes I wanna run away. Sometimes I wanna hide my face. Sometimes I feel like a disgrace. Roll me up in your love, blow me away with one. Now through the darkness we run and we throw our hands up. Never knew I could feel so alive. You run away, you know where you go. The stars are aligned, it's one hell of a night. Don't give up in this fight.
so that's the trailer to it. And I want to go ahead and play chapter 1 as an example if you would like me to go ahead and showcase one. And it's about 4 minutes right here. Now, just to show an example of chapter by chapter, what it looks like.
Legacy heist, the missing treasure in America. If poverty was a prescription, the entire world would have this pill-popping addiction. Poverty is a pill the world has chosen to swallow on a daily basis. This mental drug has been abused since slavery, and a large percentage of the world is incarcerated in a conundrum called generational poverty. You are an animal without a stimulus if you look at poverty-affected neighborhoods with a zoo-like mentality. If you believe you can cover up all your problems with a blanket of money, then it's not a coincidence you have never been happy. Poverty isn't merely the state of being extremely poor physically, but it's also the state of being extremely poor mentally. Life can be a dream. Have you ever wondered why some celebrities, athletes, and entertainers end up broke like they were literally not living their dream? It's because poverty was a pest on their property, and they lacked a pesticide called legacy. It's possible for a talented or skilled individual to become successful so quickly that they never take time to plant legacy into their life during the fertilization phase of their career. When you are dirt poor, you are in the fertilization phase. The principles you plant in this beginning stage play a major role in the harvest you will eventually grow. Therefore, you need to know how to manage $1 million before it even touches your hands. Learn legacy so you can provide a stepping stool for generations after you, and understand that poverty has always been the resource that provided fuel when you were speeding down the road to riches. America would tell you that money makes the world go round, but you can't possess it without work. We have jobs so we can attempt to run away from our poverty. You can be financially free, but how do you escape the prison called poverty when you are incarcerated mentally? If you neglect this question, your life's work can become a life sentence. You'll be erased from history like an inmate erased from society, eternally trapped in a system that's not designed for you to ever break free. Your family tree will become dehydrated generations into the future, because when you had all the money in the world, you forgot to plant one seed that would feed them for eternity: legacy. Regardless of how deep your pockets may be, you have failed if your legacy doesn't have roots that are just as deep. I pray this quote sparks controversy and gets the attention it needs. Let me show you how to share the dinner table with your great-grandkids generations into the future. Some of the wealthiest people in the world don't feel complete when they look at their reflection, because they still see a missing puzzle piece. They don't know where to find it. However, it's so valuable it's literally free, and it was never lost if you look into the life story of this kid from Milwaukee. It was 1965, and the civil rights movement was on the brink of changing the course of American history. Many lost their lives during this pivotal time in history, but their sacrifices were not in vain. It was the breakdown that gave America the breakthrough to becoming the greatest country in the world for opportunity. The gates of equality were unlocked for all Americans. In the midst of these historical moments, these events became more memorable for women bringing new lives into the world, because their children would be exposed to a variation of America that granted equality to every citizen. One of these special ladies was Carrie Williams, who lived in Duncan, Mississippi. Mother Carrie didn't participate in the civil rights movement taking place in the South because she didn't like the negative effects on the environment around her. So, instead of marching south to Selma, Mother Carrie marched north to Joliet, Illinois, and later found a home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She went north in an attempt to create a better environment for her child she had cried and prayed for. Although her child's father wasn't marching alongside her, she was still thankful that she was blessed to have a child. Her baby boy took his first breath in this evolving world of opportunity on May 8th, 1965, Frank J. Williams, was born.
Who is your mother, Carrie? You wish they could live forever.
Yeah, so that's that's an example of what it's going to be, literally chapter by chapter, and it is definitely my best work thus far, and I just can't wait to get my hands on it and actually start doing more and actually introducing it to places. And something else that we're doing is we're going to have I'm going to have these things called perspectives, because the story is it's kind of like the context of the story is so vast that you have to be intentional with it on purpose. The common denominator being generational poverty, but there's a whole list of things and directions in which you can go in regards to the topic of generational poverty. You take what Daddy didn't know, for example, growing up without your biological father, that's just a branch of generational poverty. Like, that's an example of a direction. So what we're going to do, to be intentional with it, we're going to have these things called perspectives, to where we're actually going to be creating workbooks and additional resources to go along with it, to where the workbooks would be specifically tailored to a specific community, to where it's kind of like a self-evaluative exercise, but at the same time, articulating your story through the transparency of this as an example. And what it does is going to create this opportunity to where, depending on who you are and the perspective in which you read or do along with it, the story literally transforms into something that's different for literally every single individual in the world who looks at it. Like, an example of a perspective, let's say let's say someone is a teen, growing up in a single parent home. That would be a perspective by itself. A kid who actually has both parents in the household will be a completely different perspective. Chapter by chapter, completely different set of questions, completely different set of exercises. A teacher would be its own addition. A mentor would be its own addition. Someone who's looking forward to paying it forward is his own addition. So I'm excited to see the future of that, to see what that looks like, maximizing the impact of the relevance of it, and seeing the impact that it has on the world. And that's the direction in which my career is going. And I just thank God that He has given me the opportunity to stay the course and continue to do this type of work. And but that's I know I can't really tell everything in an hour, but that's a pretty good summary of my story. That's a pretty good summary of it. And I would definitely love to do more sessions in the future once I get once I get more stuff at a specific stage and things like that, definitely do more sessions and things like that. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions or anything that they wanted to ask. Open up some Q&As.
Lance, thank you so much, first of all, for this very, very powerful presentation. I didn't miss even one word. I was totally captured by it. So thank you very much. We will give the privilege of the first question to our president, Levent. Levent, go right ahead.
Lance, first, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. You went into a little bit where you see this expanding to specific custom cater to different neighborhoods. Is this something that you would consider also going worldwide, just out of curiosity?
Oh man, I love that question. Let me tell you why. It is something that I look forward to doing worldwide, and it's definitely in the blueprint. like that, like I specifically have this kind of like this translation operation that I know I want to do with it, to where once it's established the way I see it in my head, you know, basically duplicating it and translating it. Because I got, man, I got all types of I have all types of software and things of that nature. And I have translation softwares. I got softwares that'll translate something and read it back to you in that language. So you know, having things like that and having something that's a concept of kind of like the missing treasure in America, but we're talking about generational poverty. This could be the missing treasure anywhere. So you know, taking it worldwide is definitely, it's definitely something that's in my blueprint. And that's probably the moment to where it's kind of like, you know, no matter what happens before that, you know, that's cool or whatever. But once I get to translating, it's kind of like, this is where I really want to be. Because man, it's nothing that's more powerful than translating something. A lot of people don't even realize a lot of popular stuff in America was actually written in another language. Like you know, this is an interesting fact. You take the Bible, for example. If you look at the statistics, you know, whether somebody believes in it or not, the Bible is the most sold book of all time. It's the most sold book of all time. But what's interesting is the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew and the New Testament was originally written in Greek. But you know, you look at how we study it, you know, we only look at it from the perspective of you know, this is what it says, you know, or this is the translation that we read growing up or things of that nature. We have this identity of it to where it's like this is what we know it as. But when you go deeper into it and you look at the translations of where it came from, you start to notice things that you wouldn't even notice if you didn't think to yourselves, look into what's being said about the original translations. A prime example of that, one of the commandments, you take one of the commandments, for example, the one that's a lot of soldiers struggle with this one. The one that says thou shalt not kill. A lot of soldiers struggle with that. Now watch this. They struggle with it because they grew up looking at it from that perspective. But the original translation does not say thou shalt not kill. The original translation says thou shalt not murder. It's a completely, you can see how it's a completely different shift in mindset when you look at why something was translated. So man, the thought of, you know, taking everything worldwide and having a system to where, you know, we're translating it in other languages to maximize the impact in places we might not ever go, it's going to definitely be a dream come true. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I feel we have the resources to get it done. And I just can't wait to get to that point, because that point that you raised a question about, that's the moment to where it'll be a dream come true. Everything else before that is kind of like, you know we can just put some money behind something and market it to people who speaks our language. You know, anybody can do target marketing with SEO and things of that nature, but everybody can't translate something they're already doing with SEO into another language and have that same impact. So that's where the question comes in. And yeah, you might have something that's interesting, but is it relevant to the entire world? So that's definitely going to be in the works.
Thanks, Lance. That's awesome. I want to pass the word to our Irish friend, Frank Bannister. I knew he would have a question for you. I was certain of it, actually.
Thank you, Andreas. It's actually more an observation in response to Lance's comments about language. I think language is only the beginning of your problems when you start to take a program like this out of one culture and into another. I'm looking at the videos you showed us. And I'm looking at those through Irish eyes, and those kind of messages just wouldn't resonate the same way in Ireland that they would in America. And I suspect they'd resonate quite differently in Turkey and Italy and in Berlin possibly. So I think what you're doing is wonderful. I think it's superb. I hadn't heard of you before, and I know quite a bit about you from having looked you up. But but I think if you're going to take this into a different culture, it's going to be a challenge. Just to give you a parallel problem, I mean, as you probably know, Rotary has been involved in eliminating polio for a long time. And you try to take polio vaccines into certain cultures in Africa and Asia, and you've got serious problems. And they're problems because people are afraid. They're afraid of the Westerners coming in and telling these kind of things. That's a very different problem from the one that you're looking at, but it just illustrates the point. So I think my advice would be to you or Rotary with you or whoever's going to take this one step at a time. You know, let's go from one country and then to another country. Let's not go global in a big bang, because I think you just end up falling flat on your face. That's just an observation rather than a question.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it. And like even when it comes to that, like I'm going to have how you're able to point that out to me. Like there's going to have to be people around who are a part of it, literally for each specific culture. You know, people who are familiar with it, because the relevance of it might not be exactly how it is, but it could have a powerful impact if it was tweaked based on the necessities of what that specific part of the world is dealing with, the things of that nature. Or maybe there's, other ways to where there's maybe a twist or a spin on something, to where, from the outside looking in, it might look like, it's just a simple translation operation. But, then it'll turn into something to where it's like, we're really seeing how we can provide some good resources, for these specific parts. So, I mean, I love that feedback, man. I love it.
Thanks, Lance. Lance actually has shared with me that he has never been in New York, so we surely hope to welcome him soon in this beautiful city as well. We have certainly time for one more question if there is one. Otherwise, I would pass the word to our President Levent for some closing remarks. Does anybody still have a question anywhere in the world? Turkey, Germany? Nothing? All right. Levent, would you like to say a few words, maybe things we discussed or anything?
Lance, I'd like to thank you again for this wonderful presentation. We look forward to receiving you in New York. And I look forward to seeing your future endeavors, and do come and visit us again.
Yes.
This is something wonderful that we'd like to build on. And thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for joining today. We're honored to have you guys.
Thank you very much also from my side. Just a few more updates. We will certainly continue to have these Zoom meetings. Again, they're being recorded on YouTube. Our partner Twin Cities and Friends of Rotary are always watching those, and I know we get feedback on the program as well. We will continue for several weeks with Zoom meetings as well, but we will also in October certainly have at least one live meeting starting. And so please, everybody, just let me keep you updated. I thought that Sumrun had a question. Did you want to say something, our Turkish friend?
No, I just said bye.
Oh,
I just want to say thank you.
It was the goodbye hand. Okay.
Yeah, goodbye hand.
Hand, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you once again, all of you. Thank you, Lance, for a truly extraordinary presentation, and we'll certainly stay in touch with you. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's an honor. It's an honor.
Thank you.